In the 1950s and 60s, a strategy used by several leaders of the civil rights movement was the boycott. No longer were African Americans willing to be treated as second class citizens, whether as employees or customers. And when push came to shove, segregationist business owners found that there was one color they actually liked: federal green, the almighty dollar. So, could we actually bankrupt racism? This is Loki Mulholland, and it's time to get uncomfortable. Well, today I'm joined by my co-host, freedom writer and civil rights activist Luvan Brown. Luvan, how's it going?
Fine, Loki. How are you?
Well, I'm doing all right. Just, it's the dog days of summer.
Yeah,
It's
the
hot.
dog is out there too.
You got a dog barking?
Yeah, let me tell you.
Well, back in your day, they had boycotts,
Right,
right? I'm thinking of those in downtown Jackson that were spearheaded by Meg Revers in particular.
right,
Okay, and I recently read that the goal of these boycotts was to achieve equality in hiring and promotion, to abolish segregated drinking fountains, restrooms, and seating, and to promote the use of courtesy titles in service on a first come, first served basis. Now, today, that's kind of to be expected.
right.
But what was it like prior to the boycotts if you were shopping downtown in Jackson? Or
Well,
anywhere in Mississippi, I guess, for that matter.
first of all, you there wasn't a lot of shopping for Black people downtown. Meaning, when you went into a store, you couldn't try stuff on. You couldn't um take stuff back if it didn't fit. So you only shop downtown when you had to, when there was no choice but to do that. Um, so a lot of people, not most, I don't know most, but I know a lot of people made their own stuff, or you bought it with the expectation that you would make it fit by the women mostly sewing stuff, taking the pants up or letting the pants out, or that kind of thing. So there was shopping was not the thing that was foremost in your mind. Yet you felt that that was wrong. You should have a right to do that. So we started from you couldn't do it at all, or you didn't want to, but you had to. And we went to the point of, well, you should be able to whenever you wanted to. So, uh, and I think that the boycotts, other than we won't talk about the Montgomery boycott, but certainly downtown Jackson, it just grew as a matter of course. You were down there, you were demonstrating, and you noted that you couldn't go in a particular place to eat, you couldn't get a glass of water, you couldn't do normal things of life. So the boycotts grew out of that. Grew out of a desire to be treated like a first class citizen.
Right, but I mean, if predominantly you're going to be buying from African American stores to begin with, then what was the point of having the boycott in regards of an economic tool? Because it was particularly for the Jackson one, you had the Christmas boycott, and then we're going to extend that into Easter in '63.
Well, you weren't buying, well, most of what you were buying, you didn't have access to a lot of the stuff that the white people did downtown, which is where the better merchandise was, which is where the jewelry stores were, uh, the shoe stores. So yes, you bought stuff, but what you bought, sometimes only the white stores carried it.
Oh, okay.
So if you wanted to buy a pair of shoes, there weren't a lot of Black people that carried shoes.
So
Uh,
it wasn't a matter of going, well, I'm not going to buy from this racist anyways. He's not going to get my money. It was a matter of necessity that you had to buy from a place because it was the only place that had it.
Correct.
But now, when you went into the store, you were being treated as a second class citizen.
Well, sure, because you could buy stuff because they wanted your money. They didn't
Right.
want to touch you, but they would take your money. However, uh, you couldn't take it back, and you couldn't
Hmm.
try it on.
Yeah, I remember my mom saying that, like, in the Woolworths, your money might be good on one side of the store, where you could buy school supplies, whatever, but it was not good at the other side where the lunch counters were.
But absolutely, absolutely. Uh,
Now, how much of this was the stores, just the owners of the stores and such, just being flat out racist, and how much of it was societal norms in respects of these? This was the law.
well, you don't know. You knew that that's the way things were, but you didn't know. You didn't question why things happened. Uh, the guy would tell you, like when Jim and I got arrested, the guy said, "I can't. I don't serve black people here." Well, he didn't say
This
black.
is you and Jim at the Woolworths.
Yeah, he didn't say black people, but
Oh, all right.
he said it's so we understood that we could not eat there. Or if you went into the jewelry store um, to buy a watch, for instance, and most of the stuff, not most, a lot of the stuff was bought on time, meaning you put it in layaway
Mhm.
and you paid so much a week and you could take it home on at the end of it. It was going to be a white guy, and you didn't sit around and do your shopping. You sort of picked out what you wanted, and you didn't. By the way, you didn't touch stuff. So you pointed to things. You said you wanted this, you wanted a watch, or you wanted a piece of jewelry, and the store would keep it until you could pay for it. Same thing with shoes, with suits, with anything you wanted to do. So, uh, I should keep in mind there weren't a lot of places to eat downtown, except for in the hotels. There might be a place you could go eat, but you couldn't stay there anyway. So you only went downtown to go to the stores. Now there was one street, Ferry Street, which was became mostly black, but they didn't have dry goods. It was mostly restaurants. It was mostly food. Few of the stores had other things, but that's what they were mostly.
But Capitol
So
Street was the main downtown street in Jackson,
absolutely,
and that's where the
absolutely,
Woolworths was.
that's what a Woolworth was. So you could go and white people went in there to eat. You could go to on one side and shop, but that was
Mhm.
it. So the boycott, the places where we shopped are the only, and they carried weight. The boycotts carried weight. When it said don't go downtown and buy anything, you went downtown to buy school supplies. You went downtown to buy shoes when you needed them. You went downtown to buy a suit.
Mhm.
So there were reasons to go downtown. So if to call a boycott just basically meant that downtown Jackson got no black dollars.
Mm.
Now you didn't know to what extent they got black dollars, but you knew that
They
those were
weren't
the
getting
places.
yours.
Right. That's all you knew. And it did carry weight because there were certain times of the year that you went and put stuff in layaway for Christmas. You went to, there was money. You gave them your money.
Mhm.
So it had an impact.
I was just thinking about just, I mean, obviously, whether the store owners are racist or whether it's just the law. I mean, that's almost splitting hairs, anyways.
Well, I think well, first of all, we know it was the law
Hmm.
that the colors did not mix. So if we were black, white, you didn't go in a certain place. You didn't shop at a certain place. You couldn't eat at a certain place. Or if you did shop there, like if you went to the movies, you went through one, went through the same door, and that was a matter of economics. But then you split up. So all the black people went upstairs, the white people went downstairs, so the races
Hmm.
didn't mix. So that was the law.
Right.
And there were some store owners, I'm sure that suited just fine. There were others that, that's what they did because they wanted to stay in business. And keep in mind that a lot of their business were white people.
Right.
So they didn't want to piss them off. So it's not like you had a policeman standing in front of the place keeping you from going in. Now, of course, during the 60s, when we started all this trouble downtown, they did have that. But they didn't ordinarily they didn't need policemen. We policed ourselves. Black people didn't go in to eat, didn't go in to shop, they didn't try on stuff that they weren't supposed to. So we don't
Now,
know.
during a boycott, obviously, there's going to be some black people who are still going to go shopping in these places.
Yes, because they have to.
Well, not because they have to, but let me rephrase this question. I mean, so during the boycotts, were there black people who crossed the picket line, if you will?
There were a few, but not many.
Okay. Now, what about those who actually worked in the stores?
But they had to.
Right.
They had to.
What about the economic impact against them? Because
Well, if they didn't cross the picket line, they didn't have a job.
right, but
The-
they might
the-
have a job, but you're not going in and spending your money, so they're not getting paid.
well, no, no, no. Hold on a minute. You mean they worked there,
Right.
but the boycott came, they had nothing to do.
Right.
First of all, there weren't many black people that I know of that worked in the front of the stores at Jackson.
Hmm.
They stocked stuff, they would carry stuff, they delivered stuff, but they did not wait on customers.
My work has taken me to a lot of places, and I've been fortunate to meet some incredible people. But when I came to Selma and met Joanne Blackman Bland, I knew I was in the presence of greatness. Joanne was 11 years old when she was attacked on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday in 1965. She wasn't old enough to vote, but understood its importance enough to be there. After Selma is an in-depth look at how our right to vote has eroded since the signing of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The fight for the right to vote continues. Get informed. You can find After Selma on Amazon Prime or visit LokiMulholland.com to purchase a copy for your collection. Okay, but you still have this economic chain of drivers and so forth who are bringing goods to the store. But if the store is not selling as much, then they don't need that. I mean, this.
That is correct. That is correct.
So how did you compensate for that? Or
Well, you didn't. I mean, how would you?
how do you make the economic argument for people to go, hey, look, don't spend your money there? Uh,
Because you don't own it, and the way you're being treated, if you went shopping there,
mhm.
it's the same thing when you told people to go vote. They were going to lose their jobs.
Right.
Their friends were going to lose their jobs. So it's a question of, do I want to do that badly enough? Do I want things to change badly enough to give that up?
Mm.
And we always make the argument that yes, you do,
Hmm.
because you're not winning if you're giving your money to the white man. And that's the way it was phrased. Why give him your money if he's going to treat you like this?
Right.
All right. So the only persuasive argument you could make had to be one of a revolutionary act that they were taking by not going in that store. That's it. I mean, it had nothing. We knew that they were not going to have money, and we didn't have any money.
Hmm.
Um, but when you're dealing with the businesses, certainly in Jackson, there weren't much going on. So it's not like people were losing a whole bunch by not going to work in the store, because I don't remember. Now I'm trying to remember. I mean, I'm getting old, I'm moving up in years, but I don't remember ever going in a store and being waited on by a black person,
Hmm.
right? So if they were in the store at all, it was to stock stuff and put stuff away. It was not to be in the front. So their jobs were meager to begin with.
Right. But I mean, going into these stores, so as an African American, going to these stores where everyone tending to you is white, but they don't want to tend to you anyways. There's all these protocols to make you feel less than.
Right.
I mean, my gosh. Uh, it's like you have to begrudgingly give them your money anyways because the system is designed just for that purpose. Because there's not necessarily black stores that are selling shoes and so was the system set up in respects of like Jackson where economically there was only certain businesses that black people could own? I mean, did you not have black shoe stores and
You no,
black
you
owned shoe
did. You
stores?
you could own a cafe. You could own, a place where they sold liquor and that kind of stuff. But you didn't have. I don't remember there ever being a dry goods store that was owned by black. Now there might have been like a place in the black neighborhood,
Right.
right? But it was small, number one. And most of the time, and they couldn't compete in terms of price because they were small, so they
Hmm.
had to charge more.
Right.
So there was never any reason. But so typically, what black people owned were cafes or restaurants or things like that. They did not own dry goods stores.
Was there a was there an attitude as well? I mean, because instilled in American society, at least amongst white people, is this idea that of course, black people in business are going to be shifty and stuff and try to rip you off and that sort of thing. Was there a concern of that within the black community that had permeated as well? Going, well, yeah, his prices are high because he's just trying to rip you off and these sort of things.
I think there was some of that. I think people just, and I think that was mostly because people were just mad about having to pay more.
Right.
Uh, the grocery stores were like that. Like for instance, I remember when they opened up one of the large grocery stores in Jackson, not black owned. It was
Hmm.
white owned, but they were Italian or Jewish, one of the two.
Right.
So people used to talk about them because they paid more money, but it was a place that could carry all kinds of stuff. The place,
Right.
and I worked in one of them, and the place where I worked was small, so
Hmm.
they charged more money. They had to charge more money because they didn't have to, but they charged more money because they were smaller. They had to make the rent. They did a lot of stuff on credit. That's how they stayed in business. Keep in mind, anytime a black person opened anything, like I used to work in a shoe repair store that was black
Hmm.
owned, um, and people felt that they were being a little ripped off. But at least when they went in there, they could get the shoes shined, they could get their shoes fixed, and the guy charged what he could charge
Hmm.
because you couldn't go in a white store. As a matter of fact, I don't remember ever seeing a white store, but I'm there be where you could go in. So you had to go in that store. You had to go in the grocery store. Black people didn't own any of that. They owned cafes, small restaurants, places like that.
So there was an element within the state that was trying to create an additional economic control over African Americans by limiting their abilities to flourish in respects of owning stores beyond these low margin places.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I never thought of it that way. I mean, that's just what we could open.
Right.
But but there had to be a reason. I was too young to ask what the reason was, but first of all, you had to get deliveries, right?
Right. Exactly.
So you
Who's going
couldn't.
to deliver to you?
Hey, there you go.
I mean, a
'Cause they-
catfish fry. I mean, I can go and get some catfish.
right,
Right.
because nobody did.
Right.
Deliver.
Hmm.
I mean,
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
but now the guy who delivered the beer would come to your place. The guy who delivered stuff to drink, alcohol, whatever. Now Jackson was dry. The county,
Supposedly.
Hines County, was not.
Right. Right.
You could go out, which is why people never understood that came south, that the sheriffs were the people who ran the law
Hmm.
because all of the money was made in the county.
Right.
And the county was outside of the city. Anything outside of the city limits was run by a sheriff. So they always delivered that. But that's it.
Mm.
That's
But
it.
then you had places like Mound Bayou, I mean, at least prior to the 60s, that were black towns that flourished. And
Yes.
Mount Bayou was very successful.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
they had a few of those. Because we
yeah,
know, yeah. And what it got left alone. We remember what happened in Tulsa. So
right, right.
uh,
Rosewood and Tulsa and these
all
sort of
those
places.
places, right? That black people, because they couldn't start businesses, they couldn't own businesses anywhere but the places like that.
Right. But now you had a reinvestment within that community in and of itself.
Correct.
Because so white communities, which is America, right, in this respects, would be you're always investing in white America,
Always, even the black people.
even black people, right?
Right. You
And
think
so
about
now,
all those towns that got set up, right?
mhm,
Somebody sold them stuff for them to sell.
right,
Okay. And 9 times out of 10, it was not black people.
right.
So there was always a way to catch the person. It's just that people in places like that were all black, there was no, and people would go out of their way to go there, to be
Mhm,
there, because they were treated like human beings. So they were profitable for that reason. Black people didn't have much money, but what money they did have, or what doctors they did have, or what lawyers they did have, would migrate to those towns
right.
because the white people generally didn't bother them and stayed. They paid whatever they paid. Because I remember Stevens Rose Room just outside of Jackson, the guy paid off the sheriff
Mhm,
to be left alone. And I'm sure that some of that went on in towns like Mabayu.
mhm.
But those were the places where people made it, and they weren't what we used to call cut and shoot joints.
Cut and shoe joints?
Cut and shoot, like Rankin County. Rankin County was full of them.
Cut and shoot joints.
Absolutely, you mess with the wrong person, you get cut or you get shot.
Well, all right.
We used to call them cut and shoot joints. So they didn't mind you owning those, and you paid off for having the place there because the only place to get a liquor was in the county. So over in Rankin County, you could go over there and drink all you want and party all you want. And people had to get home and stuff like that.
So you could have a little bit of economic success in the peripherals, but
Correct.
real economic growth was not going to happen in the black community,
It was not.
uh, with these small exceptions of where reinvestment was taking place within the community itself,
Correct.
like a Mound Bayou, for
Black.
example.
Correct.
Gosh, this is not the point of our discussion, but so why can't that happen today?
Well, first of all, people have, why can't the towns be developed, you mean?
Right.
Well, two things. I think a lot of things happened, but one of the things that happened was black people became convinced by white people and by themselves that they could make it in this world. This world meaning the white world.
Hmm.
So if you look around you now, that black people that own certain things, and even today, when you look at the more successful black people, they're in the entertainment business,
Hmm.
right? Because they don't bump heads with the white people. They own that business. Now, it used to be that white people even owned that.
Hmm.
Black people did the entertaining, but white people owned them.
Right.
Well, that's no longer true. So many of them have become convinced, as black people have gotten more money, that they can make it without the black people. And in many cases, it's just a matter of I'm going to use both. So they are in the music world. They are black and white people that buy records, that buy the streaming services. So there's no need for a black entertainer to only go to black places. There's no need for a black entertainer to go through the South entertaining people because nobody's going to stop him. When I say no need, that was where a lot of them made their money. James Brown, Ray Charles, all of them made their money by going into the South, the
Hmm.
Chitlin Belt, as they used to call it,
Right.
and
The
that's
Chitlin
what
Circuit.
the
Yeah.
Chitlin Circuit, and that's where they made their money.
Right.
They don't need that anymore. A lot of the people that make money don't need that anymore.
In my other life, I'm a filmmaker, and one of my more fascinating films I created is the award-winning film titled Black, White, and Us. It's about viewing racism through the lens of transracial adoptions in Utah. Utah? Yeah, Utah. It just so happens to be the transracial adoption capital of the world. So what happens when white families who didn't believe racism existed anymore adopts a black child? Find it on Amazon Prime or visit LokiMulholland.com to purchase a copy for your collection. So you have a successful company, let's say like BET, right?
Right.
The advertising dollars that they're going to get are coming from where? Predominantly white companies that are marketing that have nuanced their marketing to attract an African American audience,
Correct.
right?
Which is
So,
what
I mean,
which is why
for example,
I don't watch anything on BET, but
right. But what I'm saying is, for example, like like McDonald's. Okay, so if I'm watching a McDonald's ad on an NBA game, it's different than if I'm watching it for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
well, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Well,
You
that's
know
just
what?
target marketing. It's going, okay, I know the market is going to be, the demographics is going to be African American predominantly, or it's going to be white, or
Correct.
it's going to be Asian, and I'm going to tailor my message to fit that. That's just marketing. But what's happening though is that BET then is saying, and I don't know if this is necessarily true. I'm just thinking this through a little bit, but the assumption would be is BET is going to go after the biggest dollars that are being shoved in their face because they want that money. Can't argue with it. They got to keep the lights on.
Right.
But that money is coming from white companies.
Right.
And so it limits the ability of a black owned company to rise up because they can't afford to pay that marketing cost.
Correct.
So there's a sort of self-defeating, mechanism there. And then there's also this sort of aspect that comes as going, if I've arrived, well, what does arriving look like? It looks like living in the right house, driving the right cars. It's living a lifestyle that is predominantly, projected as white. Or if I'm a successful company and I'm getting these vendors or these marketing dollars from somewhere, it's because it's coming from these white companies. I've arrived because McDonald's is putting money into me.
Correct.
Man.
Most people uh, recognize that, and that's what they do. It's who do you partner with,
Right.
and there are more black people now with money, and they know that they invest their money in these companies like a McDonald's or Marriott or anywhere they go. Now what happens is the black entrepreneur goes where the white person goes. So investment firms, you will find them now, more black people and people of color working in these places. Why? Because black people have money and they want that money.
Hmm.
They meaning businesses. So things are not exactly the way they used to be. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying, they have a friend who thinks that we're going to make it in America or wherever if we establish this country or this place that's all black.
Hmm.
My first thought was, first of all, you're not gonna do it here
Hmm.
because they ain't gonna let you. Number one, number two, you got to buy from somebody.
Right.
And most of the places that are run by black people these days, uh, I wouldn't want to live there. Most of them, because most of them, a few people take the money, they put it in their pocket, and the rest of the people starve. And people know that.
Right.
This woman that was talking to me, when she goes on vacation, she goes up to what was it, Cape Cod.
Mm.
Well, ain't a lot of black people can afford to do that.
Right.
But so we introduce slowly. We introduce class.
Hmm.
It's more about not more about. It's as much about class now as the color. And we're not going to. At some point, we're going to have to deal with that.
Right.
We're going to have to. For instance, when the Indians were doing stuff with the
Well,
pipeline,
wait a second. When you're talking about class, though, I mean, is it class that keeps other people down, or is it
should
in
have.
respect to the need to look? We got to make sure we got our workers, or is it the racism within that's inherent within that class?
Well, I think the problem with trying to solve the problem now between black people and white people, and thank God for Trump because he's helping out. But
Hmm.
the problem is that you can't. It's almost impossible to talk about one without the other. Well, let me back up. You can talk about one step is fix the racism, so that black people get hired, get jobs, get go to schools, do everything that the white person can do, black person can do.
Right.
Right? You got to deal with that first, but then you're going to have to deal with to change anything else. You have to recognize that we are not in a classless society.
Hmm.
That a lot of the money and the power is in the hands of a few people, and it's
Right.
mostly white men.
Right.
And to change that requires a whole nother uh, approach and discussion, for that matter.
Yeah.
So the problem is, in parts of the country, you have one problem that is glaring you in the face, which is racism. The other, not so glaring, uh, because if you notice, most of the people, the black people with money, you don't hear from. With all this going on,
Hmm.
they economically could do better, but they're so tied to the power structure or the people that own stuff that they won't say very much. And there are very few of them that will.
Because the money they need is coming from white banks and so
A-
forth.
Absolutely.
An Ordinary Hero was my first award-winning documentary. It's about the life of my mother, Joan Trumpauer Mulholland, and her participation in the civil rights movement. For most of us, our mothers are heroes because they're mothers, and mom is just mom. But when your mother's a civil rights icon, and yet you never really knew it, things change. Go check out An Ordinary Hero and find out how choosing to do what was right instead of what was easy helped change the world. You can find it on Amazon Prime, or visit LokiMulholland.com to purchase a copy for your collection. So today we're seeing boycotts in other forms. So actually today, right now, is Blackout Tuesday, right?
Right, right,
Um, and then there's social media boycotts. Starbucks faced that wrath after they told their employees that they couldn't wear BLM shirts, and then a boycott instantly sprung up across social media.
right,
Right? And within a day or so, Starbucks had this, change of heart. Um, in other instances, an employee says something super racist on social media or is captured on a cell phone, and their employer fires them with a statement that they don't represent our values.
right.
Now, I'll be honest with you. I mean, to me, the employer probably didn't even know they had those values until they thought that they could be targeted on the next social media campaign.
In most cases, they didn't.
Right.
They suddenly realized, holy shit, this is going to cost us a fortune.
Yeah.
We have
But
values.
yeah. But the result's the same.
Right,
Right. There won't be any safe harbor for racists.
right. Well, there are a few companies. For instance, I just found out, like this guy that, what is it, My Pillow or whatever,
Hmm.
is a Trump supporter.
Right.
Big time, big time.
Yeah.
And there's so much now that you don't know who's who. And the problem with a lot of the boycotts that pop up is, first of all, this country is divided in terms of regions. So you may go have to do your shopping at store X, and I do mine at store Y.
Mhm.
And we it's much more difficult now to coordinate that boycott. So one day is not going to do anything to anybody.
Right. Well, I think
Right?
the day is supposed to represent, here's the value of our dollar. Here's what you are missing. And this
Right.
is why. This is why you need to listen, which is the same as the boycott, that you had back in Jackson in the 60s.
Well, that's what it was about. Right. Right.
Right. I mean, but thinking it from this standpoint though, with the Starbucks though, I mean, all right, so they go, "Oh, hey, wait a second. Okay, everyone can wear their BLM shirts." Is 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 wearing a BLM shirt enough to make a change in a company, or is it just merely, well, we're just trying to avoid something?
You know what it is? It's a company will deal with whatever it is your issue is. Let's say it's a Black Lives Matter shirt, so they will deal with that, but they will not change their structure. So if they can do that, make their money, and sort of I don't know, play to that play that song for you, and
Right,
you go away, then they're happy.
right. But I mean, I mean, so at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what created that attitude that says you can't wear that shirt still remains.
Right. That's the racist part. That's the
Right,
racism part. But all that means is that company, that particular company, in that particular place, has not caught on to what people are feeling.
right,
And as soon as it does, it will do something about that. because it costs them money.
Yeah. And they
Uh,
don't like it when it costs them money.
exactly.
So could we bankrupt the morally bankrupt? Could we effectively bankrupt racism through boycotts?
The only way to do that is to coordinate what we're going to do. If I'm in New York, you're in Utah, we have to come up with the store that we want to break, or stores,
Right.
right? That we want to break. And we don't care if it's black owned, black and white owned. It's just that those people have done something. They do something to people that is not valid. So we're going to fix that. So we have to find a way to coordinate what we're going to do. Because if you just do it where you are in Utah, you may put them out of business there, but you haven't put them out of business anywhere else.
Right. But if I'm doing it here in Utah and it shows that there's an economic impact based on this company's policies of racism, social media could say, "Oh, wait a second," people could go, "Man, well, we could do that here." Or the company goes, "All right, we don't want this spreading, so we need to change."
Uh, right. But again, we only need to change. We don't change ownership. We don't change them. We'll change the message.
Right.
For instance, I'm in New York and I can go and shop in any store I want,
Mhm.
but I can't stop the people from following me around certain stores because I'm black.
Right.
So now, do I attack that? Do I go after that? And you may not even have that store. So I go into Nordstrom's. I don't know if there's a Nordstrom in Utah or not, but I go into Nordstrom's to buy stuff. I used to, well, I don't go anywhere now, but uh, when I did, so they would treat me all right in Nordstrom. They would treat me just fine.
Mhm.
Right. So you out in Utah and you got a Nordstrom's that doesn't treat you well. So I now have to agree that we're going to do something about that.
Mhm.
The first thing we're going to do is not boycott. We're going to go to the management of Nordstrom because they treat me fine, don't forget. And
Mhm.
I'm going to talk to them about how people are being treated in Utah.
Right.
So it is a long, drawn out process. It's not like it used to be where, we go downtown Jackson, it's a local store. Most stores were local then,
Right.
right? So we could go to a local store or we put that store out of business, we had a problem.
But think about this for a moment then. So, this is kinda getting into the nuts and bolts, which is great. What does it really take? Um, so on a local level, there's one technique,
Right. Correct.
and then on a national level, there's another technique.
There's another. And your audience changes. In
Right.
other words,
Let's just talk about the local levels here. So in Salt Lake City, we got the store that just continually being racist, treating customers of color um, differently than they do their white customers and so forth. So we've recognized the issue. Now, what's the steps to boycott that place?
well, the same thing we used to do, you just have a different methodology. So you don't pass out leaflets. You just
Hmm.
go through social media.
Okay.
Most people are logged on social media. So you say this store is doing, first of all, you give them an opportunity to fix what's wrong. So you go to them and say, what you're doing is wrong. I don't, we're not going to shop in your store till you fix that. So they may say, oh, Jesus, we're going to fix that.
Hmm.
Let's say they say, it's my store. I do what I want with it. So now you send a message out that we don't want to go there because of X, whatever X
Hmm.
is. X is they don't treat black people right. They don't treat young people right. Whatever it is,
Right. Right.
and you now get that message out to everybody. And if you have to go door to door to do that, to do part of that, you do that. If you can do it on social media, you do that.
Talk to
All you
the
have to do is
press, whatever it is.
whatever it is to tell people that they shouldn't go there if they feel that way about that.
Hmm.
That's all you need to boycott a place. Now, you don't have to worry about it because if they want to change, they will come to you and they'll say, we're changing that. You know, we're getting rid of black people can come in here now, and we've gotten rid of X number of waitresses or waiters who used to treat people this way. So there's a lot you can do. That doesn't change anything economically, but it does keep them from going out of business. See, the problem now is most people, a lot of people, not most, I don't know most, a lot of people will order stuff from Amazon. Now we don't know what the we know that's convenient, but Amazon used to refuse to pay their people a decent wage.
Hmm.
Now, a decent wage in New York is not the same as a decent wage in Alabama, but they didn't pay him a decent wage. So now, people got on social media and said, Amazon is only paying X. We're not going to work there. There's no sense in going to work there. So it depends on where it is and what it is.
Want a great way to help a worthy organization and educate children about the civil rights movement? Visit our foundation, the Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation, at thejtmfoundation.org. That's thejtmfoundation.org. We are a 501c3 established to help end racism through education. A $5 monthly recurring donation will provide curriculum for 30 students. As my mother used to say, I can't do everything, but I can do something, because doing nothing is not an option. If you have wanted to help in this cause, but didn't know how, now you can. The Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation at thejtmfoundation.org. So, on a broader national sort of scope, how do you tackle that with a store?
Well, because if they are treating me all right in New York, then obviously it's not the policy of the store
Mm-hmm.
to do X to mistreat their customers in Utah. That
Right.
is
Well,
the manage
the policy of the corporation.
the
Right.
policy of the corporation is not to do that. So the manager of the store is doing that on their own,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what we expect is that will stop, and a store will not open or will not give into what the local tradition, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
of keeping black people out or keeping red people out or whatever. Those that do, we have to now not go to the one in New York.
So now we have a store in Salt Lake City that doesn't want to service African Americans. So you go to the New York store and you're like, "Hey, I know this is not your policy because you treat me well, but what I'm hearing from my friends in Salt Lake City is that there's a particular manager that is not listening and that does not treat people the way you treat me,
Right.
and that needs to stop, or I'm not shopping here."
Correct.
So we need to make that decision and make that connection for them.
You
Um,
have to do that. The best example of that is when IBM
mhm.
built their own golf courses. Nobody that worked for IBM could join the golf club. The reason they did it was because I'm sorry, they could join, they couldn't take a client there. They did that so that because a lot of the private clubs in Westchester did not allow people of color.
Hmm.
And IBM said, "Well, that's fine. That's your club. You do what you got to do. But our people will go to our golf courses." And they built one on Long Island. They built one I think they built two in Westchester. And those were the only places you could take clients,
Mm.
right? Because their argument was that they have people of color, they have white people, they have all kinds of people who entertain their clients, and they can't have you being a member of Westchester Country Club, and you take the person to Westchester Country Club, and I take them to a local public golf course. They weren't going to have that, but the company made the decision not to do that.
Yeah.
When Xerox was buying up, they were going to move to, I think, somewhere in Ohio. They told them point blank, either you change your rules at the golf course, or we don't move here. So you need that at a corporate level for that to happen. But they did it. They did it. So that's what we would do with Nordstrom. The who are the ice cream people? Ben
Ben and
and
Jerry's.
Jerry.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
Ben and Jerry's, those guys were hippies from day one. But when they make a statement about how they're going to treat people, every place that they own has to do that.
Mm.
They mean it. They say that's not going to happen.
And that's already inscribed in the DNA of the company. It's not
That's in
something
the
that needs
DNA of
to.
and we have to. NASCAR. I mean, it was huge when they got rid of the flag.
Right,
Now of course they went right ahead and found a noose, but
right.
uh, they got rid of the flag. So that's the company saying, no matter where we race, we will not have any of that. Now
Hmm.
they may lose customers, they may not, but the point is that the people up top have to set those rules, which incidentally is why the Washington Redskins have still not changed their name.
But they're now actually talking about it.
Yeah, they talked
And
about it before. I think
well, yeah.
they're a little more serious this time
Well,
because
yeah. Actually the talk now is that they're actually the talk is to change it. That they're trying to figure out what that's going to be because when FedEx put the pressure on, and then all the other local sponsors and stuff,
correct. That's what happened.
suddenly, now you have these other corporations that are saying, "Hey, wait a second,"
It's when they're losing money.
right?
It's when they, whatever the company is, it's when it's losing money. That's why boycotts work. That's why they worked because not only were they losing customers, customers meant money.
Yeah.
And up until the time, we had that in Jackson, it was, you go in the store, you figure you had no choice, you pay your money, they treat you like shit, but
Hmm.
most of them did, but not all. They treat so you had you had no option. So you figured I may as well give it all up and see what happened. And the only reason they gave in was because they were losing money.
Right.
So how do we? It only works if that's what's happening. So how do we do that now? We have to go to the big companies and get them to change. Because when the big companies change, the little ones will.
So is today's boycotts now then just merely um, calling out the owners? Like you brought up Papa John's. I mean, the owner of Papa John's was man. Uh, you know, people took him out, and suddenly, they were losing all these deals with football teams, college teams, and so forth. And suddenly, everyone was like, "I don't want to be associated with this guy."
Right.
And so, as you find out, you start to dig a little dirt on the owners and so forth, and where they stand.
Right.
That really, it's like the employee that there was this guy. Gosh, it was just today. I guess it was over the 4th, but the video came out that there's this guy who was wearing this T-shirt that said something like um, "controlling the world since 1776." Right, and there's this white guy, and someone was filming him in a Costco simply because he wasn't wearing his mask, and he was like being belligerent with someone else. And then he turned on that person. He's like, "I feel threatened." He's cursing him out and so forth. Um, then Allstate, he was an insurance salesman for Allstate, and Allstate said, "Yeah, he doesn't work for us anymore. He doesn't represent
Right.
what we feel employees should be, behaving themselves and so forth, and
Right.
our values." Going back to that, original statement, they
Right.
don't represent our values.
Absolutely.
It's so. I mean, there's a cultural shift that can be made by calling
The
these people out.
the woman that now she's a minute like a small peg, but the woman in Central Park
Right.
that jumped on the guy,
Hmm.
as soon as that hit social media, she got fired.
Right.
Right? I mean, right away they fired her. Of course, now they're trying her for calling the police without cause or some shit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that
Should be strangling her dog. That should be.
she's starting to make me feel sorry for her. But it's that kind of stuff we have to
Well,
go
yeah.
after.
Well, yeah, you had a cosmetic, so we had the people in was it San Francisco where the guy was writing Black Lives Matter on his own house.
Oh yeah, yes, that's right.
And the lady was a CEO, an owner of some cosmetic company, and that was selling into a larger company. And they're like, "Yeah, we're not going to carry you anymore."
That's because companies now realize that as soon as you see that black people, brown people, will
White
stop
people.
buy white people will stop buying. Well, actually, a lot of white people will
Yeah.
stop buying in their store,
Yeah.
and they don't want that. We will stop. They will stop. This woman that was in Central Park worked for an investment firm.
Right.
Well, ain't no black person or white person are going to, no, a sizable amount of white people and black people will stop going there.
Right.
So they wanted it known right away that she don't work here no more.
So then, coming back to this idea then of bankrupting racism, is today's boycotts then might be more effective in holding companies accountable to their value statements
Right,
by how they are represented by their employees, by their owners,
right,
and then holding them to that. And that if they want my money, look, we're going to call out your employees who are doing these horrible things when you're not when you seemingly aren't paying attention.
right. That's one of the advantages of stuff now being run by corporations because you don't have to go after every little body. You just have to go after the corporation. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so in regards of bankrupting racism, it's not so much bankrupting a store as it is bankrupting those who would act racist to begin with, going, hey, look, if you're going to be racist, we're not going to employ you.
right.
And the fear that corporations would have of a backlash of having someone like that uh, is enough to move the needle.
In many cases, it is.
Yeah, at the very least, at least they're not employing someone who's got that toxic behavior that could spread within a company. Or maybe he's a manager, or maybe he's a frontline person. If this guy's selling insurance, who is he selling it to? What type of rates is he giving African Americans or Hispanics versus white people?
There you go.
And because the fear of them going bankrupt is how we bankrupt racism.
Exactly. There you go.
All right. Well, right on, man. I think we solved the world's problems today. So
Well, we got the bankruptcy. We took care
yeah,
of that anyway.
we got the bankruptcy boycott done. All
Yeah,
right,
we got a ways to go.
yeah. Nah, man,
Things have changed.
they have. They have. It's an interesting time to be in when looking at these issues. Now, some of the things are still the same. Some of the techniques still apply, but man, it's we just got to modify for the times.
Exactly.
Medgar's boycotts downtown worked, and it
And
worked
it's
for a
not
reason.
and it's not so much today as bankrupt them as financially making them hurt.
Right.
Because as soon as you do that, oh, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
The-
mean,
the- the-
and they know that bad news travels 10 times faster than good news
oh,
because,
it
like you said,
does.
that lady in Central Park, instantly, I mean, instantly, she's gone. It's like, man, we do not want this storm.
But many of the companies have changed, and they don't want anybody in their stores, in their anywhere who makes them who the banks, all of them, because money now there's a lot of competition. See,
Hmm.
before there used to be one store that sold jewelry, one store that sold shoes, one store that sold whatever. Now that's not. I don't know about all over the country, but certainly not in the areas where, like New York,
Hmm.
they know that you can go down the street and buy stuff,
Right.
and they don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Now they may still hate my guts, but they're gonna treat me nice, and they're gonna sell me to sell me stuff. They're gonna treat me nice.
Right. Right.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
I catch you following me around. I'm gonna make. A matter of fact, I was in a store. I was in a store. I'm in the store, and I was looking for particular kind of shirts,
Hmm.
and there was people saw me and they just won't rock back by and whatever. So I said, so finally somebody came over and says, are you being taken care of? I said, so well, I guess I'm not their type of customer. I got all kinds of service. I had people coming out the back. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Well, did you
Yeah.
get what you needed? Well, let me order that. I'll order that for you if you want.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because you can go, there are a lot of places will take your money. But you got to speak up.
Yeah.
You have to speak up.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate it, Levon. Until next time.
That worked out.
Uh,
It was my pleasure, man.
All right, man. All right.
My pleasure.
Thank you again for listening. Make sure you head to my Patreon page at patreon.com/Loki Mulholland. Show a little love if you can, and get access to even more content. Until next time, don't be afraid to get uncomfortable.